If there's one thing that unites humankind, it's that we all hate that being shit stage right at the start of learning something new. Doesn't matter what that skill is. Plastering, skydiving, football, cosplay, cross-stitching, mountain biking, sex. Nobody likes being bad at it. Particularly, that last one. But until they start imprinting skills directly in our brains, everyone has to suck at the start. There are no exceptions, no get-outs and no shortcuts. But if you put in some focused hours and you rise slowly from the ranks of the rookies and you begin to become moderately accomplished at something, you might start throwing the old side eye at the output produced by your peers. And you might say to yourself, I've been doing this as long as them. How come they're much more successful than me? You may ask yourself, why can't I catch a break? The other guy always seems to land the biggest fish. Why is it, you ask, that some people just seem to have more luck than others? Well, if you're ready to hear it, I have an answer for you. Truth bombs incoming. Roll the intro. I'm always grateful for a nicely worded comment on the stuff that I share with the world, whether it's my photographs, my music, or my singularly awesome YouTube content. I do genuinely appreciate someone taking a moment out of their day to share their thoughts with me. That brief human connection between two completely random souls. But there's one comment that pops up every now and then when I share photographs on social media, and it makes me a bit tetchy. Right place, right time. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand the intent behind the comment. It's a marginally improving comment, one that is intended to suggest that it's a really good photograph in a tip of the hat kind of way. I don't think that people who say right place, right time mean to come off as arseholes, but there is actually a very sly dig embedded in that statement, isn't there? The subtly disguised criticism is that I, the photographer, only scored that particular photograph due to the random vagaries of the universe. The moment in question was always going to be happen, and while I was there to have its glory bestowed upon me, it could have happened to anyone. This, dear friends, is utter bollocks. Did luck have a part to play in it? A small part? Yes. But here's that truth bomb. Luck doesn't happen if you're not there to receive it. If I happen to score an incredible photograph of an amazing scene, then there were 1,000 completely deliberate things I did prior to that moment that made it possible, none of which had anything to do with luck. In the longer term, leading up to that nanosecond before I pressed the shutter button on my camera, were the 40 years I've been taking landscape photographs, the decades learning the craft of photography, and the many, many years of misery when I was deeply unsatisfied with my work. There was all the time I spent learning how best to use my camera equipment, all the time and expense I spent improving my equipment, all the mistakes I made along the way. There were all the trips out into the countryside, all those super early mornings and super late nights. There were all the flat batteries, the corrupt SD cards, the broken lenses, the malfunctioning tripods, the missed focus, the clouded over sunrises, the rising tides and the wrong turns. Yes, a roll of the dice went in my favour. Whoop-de-fucking-do. You only get lucky if you show up. Or to quote the legendary golfer Lee Trevino, the harder I work, the luckier I get. Yes, luck can strike at any time. But if you haven't put in the legwork beforehand, and if you hit snooze and stay in bed, then all the luck in the world isn't going to help you, is it? That moment will fly straight past you, and someone else who didn't hit snooze will probably be there to catch it. I am sometimes asked how it is that I always seem to have new material to share on my blog and on my socials. The answer's simple. I just show up. I realised a long time ago that I needed to let the law of averages work in my favour. If I set the alarm for sunrise just once a month, then I've got just 12 chances a year to score a great photo. So consequently, I set the alarm whenever I think there's a good chance of an interesting sunrise, which is a lot more than 12 times a year. Believe it or not, there's a real scientific theory behind all this, and it goes by the name of planned happenstance. Developed by Professor John Krumboltz of Stanford University, the theory states that we should not resist the unpredictable changes in our lives, but rather embrace them and seek out opportunities that align with our natural strengths and interests. This approach involves being adaptable to the unexpected twists and turns that life presents. In the modern era, where change is constant, flexibility is more crucial than ever. You only get lucky if you show up. Recently, I had my first gallery exhibition. This guy came into the gallery, we got chatting, and he said he was a photographer too. And I quickly realised he had a bit of a chip on his shoulder. He started name dropping well-known national photographers, which was a bit cringy if I'm honest, criticising my choice of print formats and otherwise coming across like a bit of a bellend. He suggested that I was playing fast and loose with my post-processing and that I had pushed the saturation of my images too far. Now, firstly, if I had done that, I certainly wouldn't have been ashamed of doing so, because that's a simple artistic choice like any other. But that wasn't the case with any of the prints I had on display. So I told him that I hadn't done any dramatic saturation or vibrance tweaks to the images, and he asked me how it was then that all of my prints were so colourful. And I said to him that of the 250,000 or so images I've taken in the last 20 years, these are the photographs of the most colourful skies. Those 15 photographs represented the top 0.006% of my work. There was very little luck involved in my taking photographs of such vibrant skies. I simply put myself out there as often as possible. And most of the time I went out, the photographs were average at best. But you pay for the good shots with the bad ones. And let me tell you, I paid my dues. Here's an example. I scored an awesome shot of a lightning bolt touching down over 7 Mile Beach. It's probably the best photo I've ever taken. In fact, I made a whole video about it, which I'll link to up there. And many of the folks, when they see it, say, geez, how lucky was that? But luck had nothing to do with it. I was tracking the storm that produced that bolt from the minute it popped up on the weather radar. I made sure all of my camera equipment was ready to go, and I drove to a location that experience had taught me would offer the best possibility of a good shot. Then I stood on that beach and I set up my camera. I did not have a lightning trigger at the time, so I used the traditional method of just keeping the shutter open for as long as possible. I composed my shot and pre-focused down the beach. Then I stood there as the sun set and the landscape transformed and the lightning started cracking all around me. And I was on my own. There were no other photographers there, and all the locals were happy to watch that storm from the safety of their own homes. As soon as the bolt in my photo hit the ground, I checked the back of the camera and realised I had a great shot. It looked sensational on that LCD screen, and as it turned out, I had to do virtually nothing to that RAW file. So you tell me, was that luck? I don't think luck had anything whatsoever to do with it. I used my experience and I showed up. The lightning strike in that photo was always going to crack out of that cloud and strike the earth in that location, but the only reason I got a photo of it was because I made it happen. You only get lucky if you show up. Alrighty guys, that'll do us for this little video. Have you scored a few lucky photographs? Did you find a 4-leaf clover next to a horseshoe while bending down to stroke a black cat? Or did your experience and knowledge make it all possible? Let me know in the comments section below. And if you found this video to be entertaining or useful, please give me a like and consider subscribing to my little channel. Till the next time, guys, ta-ta.